Hey, this is it for the night, but I thought while I was thinking about some things earlier, because what I do is I provide basically a perspective from a native Indian's perspective, because this is our home world and I have a spiritual relationship with a holographic goddess. Okay. So, what is holographic information in geospace time, or geospace, geometric space? The only reason time is even considered is simply based on the speed of the wave and how fast we're speeding up the space. The space is the holographic information that we're using to experience who we are at any one given moment on the event horizon to the next. Right? So that means that the data is always changing, which means the energy is always changing. Okay, which means the experiences are always changing. Which is one of the reasons I thought of it was so ridiculous to think of the fact that if you owned a plot of land, for example, and you had an allodial title that says, I own this property, and you took a picture of it, and you could represent that as data, then the next day that you took a picture of the same holographic data, the holographic data would not be the same as it was when you took the picture before. So what you think you own the day before is not the same as it is the next day. So what you think you own always changes. That means the nature of the property changed because the data changed. Who do you think is spinning the data that is represented by the energy field that is in this planet? Get the picture? So this is one of the reasons why when I was a child and I thought when we call the shifting sands of time, we're also talking about the shifting sands of what's known as chemical weathering. Every time it rains and it downpours, it's moving stuff, isn't it? So therefore, the data that is in the field that we experience in all the ways in which the particles come together to experience all the particles are not the same particle arrangement as they were 5 minutes before, any more than they were 24 hours before that. That means that the energy field is always on the move, and it is. Okay? So that's why I thought it was kind of crazy in a way when you think that you have creative imagination, if you will. And I'm a storyteller, and I'm a visual storyteller, so that visual story is holographically being told by the information that's represented by it. So if I'm going to slow the speed down in order to write the story, which is putting the energy on the paper, right, and I tell that story, okay, that story, because it was made with eternal light, okay, is in eternity because the light that was used to write it with is what love is in living spirit. That allows others to be able to experience how much love we have in our heart by the stories that we tell to each other. Those stories mean that they belong to everybody. The cosmos itself is an evolution of the sum of its parts, which represents the different state of its consciousness, which can be represented by the different density in which we experience the holographic universe. So when you begin to realize that she's giving away free energy, and all that energy is all that data that's in the field that we experience, we're experiencing the data that's always in a constant state of change. So how can you own something that's always changing? Particularly when you're here in the third dimension, in which it's got a time clock built into a classroom, in which it's time to say sayonara, okay, in which you ascend to the higher hyperdimensional realms because the speed of the Makama is allowing you to be able to move through the gates. Right? So that's when I thought about how we all share all the stories that we can tell and all the information that we share about what it is that we know. We don't charge a fee for that because that information is accessible by everybody in the field. That's what a morphogenetic field structure is. Okay? It's sort of like this. Remember I talked about the study that they did that Rupert Sheldrake highlighted in one of his books and also in his presentations? He talked about how those children in Los Angeles had invented a game and they mastered the skill sets over so many years, and then they exported that game to a same group of children that were similar in age and gender, if you will. And they started off at the same skill set that was mastered that the children in Los Angeles had reached after so many years, which meant that that was an information transfer. That means that the information that is in the field okay, the holographic information field, means that the children in China were now experiencing in their mind the data that was experienced in the minds of others 5 years previous. Actually, they experienced the information that represented where they left off. Because the cosmos is not dumb, okay? It has a way of transferring information that doesn't need to be repeated in order to know it. It's in the field. So if you want to advance the coursework of the population of the planet, how do you do that? You speed up the information transfer that's in the morphogenetic field structure that connects every unit of consciousness, that allows them to realize how light works, to be able to spin the Merkaba at a higher rate of speed. Now when everybody's running a high rate of speed, which is spinning the Merkaba at 600 and 800 million hertz, then imagine what everybody's experiencing here on the earth plane. You see? So they had to block that process. They reversed it, which means they reversed the speed of the learning by garbage in, and then we get garbage out, which is no different than an operating system that is a computer, a biochip, and you get bad information that comes into the system. It gets recorded into memory, and then the output becomes what the state of consciousness is outputting, which is toxic data, which produces toxic input again over time. Garbage in, garbage out. Garbage in, garbage out. Garbage in, garbage out. That's the time loop. That's a feedback loop. That's a biofeedback loop. Which means we weren't learning fast enough in order to stop the process from one seed generation of learning to the next. Because all you got to do is look at, well, how many generations do we need to go back, in which everybody was running in reverse, and instead of gaining light and gaining speed over time, they were losing light over time, in which to collapse their own timeline. How'd they get away with that? That was the first thing I looked at when I was about 8 years old. How did they do that? How did they get away with that? How was it that one generation of seemingly intelligent beings, and one of the first things I looked at was in Germany. How is it that a group of people who are culturally defined through their own history and how they think of themselves as being highly intelligent people, okay, that they could have allowed themselves to be led by a monster? You remember what Hermann Goering said at the end of World War II during the war crime trials? Simple. Put them into a state of fear. Traumatize the heck out of them. And they will get on their knees. And they will serve that master. So trauma becomes mind control. And that's what they used. And that's why when I walk through different cities and towns and I see how many beings are running low frequency energy and taking drugs. I just left a store just to go get some water. And I couldn't believe this. It's not surprising. I walked up and the door was locked at this store. And there was a guy that was standing out there, okay? And he looked like a hobo that just got off of a freight train, right? Back in the 1929 Depression era, right? And he blurted right out in front of about 20 other people that were standing around, and some people around a burrito truck. And he said, oh, the guy locked the door because he's got to go into the back room and smoke some crack. So he's taking a crack break. Man. This is downtown Medford, Oregon. So I waited around for about 10 minutes, and sure enough, the guy shows back up. So you can walk up and down these streets and see what's happened in America. This is why when I thought about how painful it was when I was a child and what you know that you're going to experience in the future, if you're not willing to experience how much pain and suffering that is, then how do you think the light is ever going to be able to restore it? Right? That means an enormous amount of light has to come in here to raise the frequency and heal everybody on the planet in order to do that. Which includes raising the light. The girl has to raise the light to get her shield back up too, doesn't it? That means we don't live in fear of having to go through all the pain and suffering in order to come out the other side and push more light to restore what happened here. That's the only way you survive it. Is by maintaining the heart wheel that you have to keep your Merkaba spinning in the face of so much technology that is being thrown against you to essentially suck the light out of your battery and consume your soul. So it is by the good grace of the goddess in this planet that I managed to have a spiritual communication relationship with her that allowed me to heal when I needed to heal and remove and give myself, what do you call it, a memory wipe, you know? So anyway, the good news is that this planet is being liberated, its consciousness is being liberated, which essentially simply means that we'll be able to experience more light, which is higher speed, which allows us to be free from the clutches of those that are seeking to hold our mind's energy captive and thus continue to harvest energy off of us as energy slaves. This planet has been liberated. That much I know. That's the good news. So anyway, have a good night. Be good to yourselves.